I never thought I'd be sitting here, staring at a screen, typing out the wreckage of my life for strangers to read. A few months ago, I was just a guy trying to keep his head above water, drowning in a silence so thick it felt like it was pressing the air right out of my lungs. They say the truth sets you free, but I've found that the truth mostly just hurts. It strips away the delusions you spent years meticulously crafting to keep from breaking down. Why would someone who promised to walk beside you through everything decide one day that you were just dead weight? How does a person look at their own flesh and blood, the little boy they brought into this world, and decide that a corporate title and a corner office are worth more than a bedtime story or a hug? I still don't have the answers, and God knows I've stayed up far too many nights trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces were thrown into a furnace years ago. You look at these happy families on social media, the ones with the matching outfits and the perfectly curated captions, and you think you know what's going on behind closed doors. But you don't. You never do. I was living that life. I thought I was part of a team. I thought we were building a future together, brick by agonizingly slow brick, only to wake up one morning and realize the foundation had been rotten from the start. I'm standing on the precipice of a finalized divorce now, a process that has been less like a legal procedure and more like an autopsy of my own heart. In 2 months, the papers will be signed, the ink will be dry, and the life I knew will officially be a memory. But the questions? Those aren't going anywhere. I tried everything. I begged, I pleaded, I suggested counseling, until the word felt like a curse in my mouth. I wanted to save us, not because I was obsessed with the idea of marriage, but because I believed in the promise we made. I wanted my son to have a mother who was present, someone he could look up to, someone who wouldn't look at him like he was an inconvenience blocking her path to the top. When she finally admitted it, the moment the mask slipped and she told me, cold and clear, that she cared more about her career than being a wife or a mother, it wasn't an explosion. It was the quietest, coldest thing I've ever heard. It was as if she had finally voiced a reality I had been terrified to acknowledge. The woman I married had been gone for a long time, and I had been living with a ghost. I remember the day the custody agreement fell into place. The lawyers, the paperwork, the sterile smell of that office. Everything felt like it was happening to someone else. Originally, the plan was the standard shuffle. Primary custody for me, every other weekend for her. It was supposed to be balanced. It was supposed to be fair. But fairness is a strange concept when the other person doesn't want the responsibility. Then came the conversation with my son. I didn't want to drag him into this. I wanted to protect him from the ugliness, to shield his small, developing world from the toxicity of our failing marriage. But he's sharper than I gave him credit for. He told me, in that quiet, devastating way only children can, that he wanted to be with me, full time. He knew. He felt the distance. He felt the coldness. When he told me he wanted to speak to the judge, I knew I had to act. I didn't want him in that courtroom. I didn't want him exposed to the legal circus. I told her, and for the first time in years, she didn't fight me. She stepped back, almost like she was relieved to be let off the hook. Is it relief? Or is it just indifference? I spend my therapy sessions dissecting these moments, trying to find the point where her motherhood instinct evaporated. Was it there at all? Was it a performance? It feels, sometimes, like I was living with someone sociopathic. Someone who could simulate affection just long enough to keep things functioning until they didn't need to anymore. The way she has handled it since, barely visiting, calling only when the mood strikes her, it confirms the worst of my fears. My son is resilient, and I am doing everything in my power to be the anchor he needs, but the confusion in his eyes when he asks where she is, that's a scar that isn't going to fade anytime soon. The nights are the hardest. When the house finally falls silent, when the last toy is put away and the last bedtime story has been read, the silence doesn't just sit there, it screams. It echoes off the walls of a home that was supposed to be filled with the laughter of a mother and the warmth of a partnership. I sit in my living room, the glow of the television barely illuminating the shadows, and I find myself retracing every step, every argument, every moment of coldness that I previously ignored, or worse, justified. I would look at her across the dinner table, watching her stare at her phone, her thumb scrolling endlessly through emails, while our son tried to show her a drawing he made at school. I'd see her eyes glaze over, that distant look that told me her mind was already in the office, calculating numbers or planning meetings, while her heart was completely absent from the room. I've been diving back into Reddit lately. I know. It's probably the last place a man in my position should look for sanity. But there's a strange comfort in the anonymity of it all, in reading stories from other people who have walked through the fire and come out on the other side, or at least come out alive. It makes me feel less alone in this particular brand of misery. People often tell me I'm lucky, that I won because I have full custody, because I have the freedom to build a life on my terms. But they don't see the reality of being the sole parent, the one who has to be the good cop, the bad cop, the breadwinner, and the nurturer all at once. They don't see the way I have to pivot, suppressing my own rage and heartbreak, just to ensure my son's morning routine is stable. I've started therapy, and let me tell you, it's not the soothing experience the movies make it out to be. It's like surgery without anesthesia. My therapist is a patient woman, but she pushes, and she pushes hard. She asks me, "Why did you stay so long?" And for the longest time, I didn't have an answer. I thought if I just worked harder, if I just loved more, if I just carried more of the load, she would eventually see what she was missing. I thought that if I could just give her enough space, she'd realize that a title on a business card couldn't hold her hand when she was sick, or that a high-paying job couldn't give her the unconditional love that a child provides. But she didn't want the love. She wanted the validation of the world, and she was willing to trade her own family to get it. The most painful part isn't even the divorce itself. It's the realization that I was mourning her long before she actually left. I was grieving a woman who was sitting right there, breathing the same air, sleeping in the same bed, but who was miles away in her head. I've had to come to terms with the fact that I was in love with a version of her that didn't exist, a projection I had built to keep the peace. When she finally admitted that her career was her only priority, it was like the last brick of a crumbling wall finally giving way. The relief I felt was sickening. It wasn't relief that we were over. It was relief that I didn't have to wonder anymore. I didn't have to keep asking, "What's wrong? Why are you pulling away?" Because the answer was staring me in the face, blunt and unforgiving. I see her now, or rather, I don't see her. She drops in maybe once every few weeks, and it's always on her terms, always when it's convenient for her. She shows up, she plays the role of the doting mother for an hour, taking a few photos for her social media feed, and then she's gone before the sun sets. She doesn't ask about his schoolwork. She doesn't ask about his fears. She doesn't even seem to notice the subtle ways he's changing, growing, and learning. I watch it all from the doorway, my fists clenched so tight my knuckles turn white, forcing myself to remain calm because my son is watching. I have to be the example. I have to show him that even when people disappoint you, even when they fail to show up, you don't break. You keep going. People have this romanticized idea of what it means to leave a marriage, especially when children are involved. They imagine dramatic confrontations, thrown plates, and the kind of cinematic closure you see in movies. But the reality is far more agonizing. It's the mundane, soul-crushing stuff. It's the sound of a suitcase zipper in the hallway. It's the way the house feels instantly too big, like the air has been sucked out of it, leaving you to rattle around in the emptiness. I remember standing in the kitchen, just days after the final talk, looking at her coffee mug on the counter. It was exactly where she always left it. She hadn't even bothered to put it in the dishwasher. In that moment, it hit me. She had been checked out for years. She wasn't just a career-driven woman. She was a woman who had systematically deleted the family unit from her internal map of the world. And the most terrifying part was how easily she did it. There was no hesitation in her eyes. It was like she was closing a tab on her browser, moving on to the next task in her daily planner. My son, though, he's the one who really taught me what strength looks like. You'd expect a child in his position to be acting out, to be screaming, to be confused. And he was, in his own way. He'd have these quiet moments where he'd just stare at the front door, waiting for a car to pull into the driveway that wasn't coming. But he also developed this profound, quiet maturity that broke my heart into a million pieces. He realized before I did that his mother wasn't coming back in the way he needed her to. One evening, we were sitting on the floor putting together a Lego set. It was a massive one, the kind that takes days to finish. He looked up at me with these big, wide eyes and asked, "Dad, is it okay if I don't want her to come over this weekend? It makes my tummy hurt." My heart plummeted. I didn't know how to handle that. As a parent, you're supposed to encourage the relationship between your child and their mother, regardless of how you feel about her. But how do you reconcile that with the fact that his presence seems to be a chore for her? I told him it was okay. I told him he didn't have to do anything that made him uncomfortable. That was the moment I stopped being just a husband who was getting a divorce. I became a father who was finally going to prioritize my child's peace of mind over some archaic societal expectation of how a family should look. The aftermath of that choice was intense. She didn't like it. She didn't like being told that her visitation was now subject to our son's emotional readiness. She called it manipulative, claiming I was poisoning his mind. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. She, who hadn't asked about his math grade in 3 months, was suddenly concerned about parental alienation. It was all about control for her, just like her career. She wanted the idea of being a mother, the status, the image of being a co-parent, without the actual labor of being there. I've had to learn to set boundaries that are as firm as iron. When she calls now, I don't let it be a surprise. I don't let her waltz into our lives just because she feels guilty or bored. I've realized that my life is no longer a waiting room for her arrival. We have a rhythm now, my son and I. We wake up, we make breakfast, pancakes, usually burnt on one side, just the way he likes them. We go to school, we come home, we do the homework, and we talk. We actually talk. I've spent so much time on Reddit, reading these threads, and I've seen people attack stay-at-home dads, or men who take primary custody. People call us names, they imply we're soft, or they question why a father would be the one to take the kids. It's infuriating. They don't understand that parenting isn't gendered. It's about who shows up. It's about who is there when the fever spikes at 3 a.m. It's about who remembers that tomorrow is pajama day at school. And honestly, the people who get so angry at these stories are usually the ones who are terrified of their own inadequacies. They see someone doing the hard work they aren't willing to do themselves, and it scares them. I'm tired of the judgment. I'm tired of the questions from friends who think they know how it went down. They'll say things like, "Surely she didn't mean to be that cold," or "Maybe you just didn't support her ambitions enough." As if my support was the missing ingredient in her ability to love her own child. I don't defend myself anymore. I just smile and move on. My life, the only one that truly matters now, is inside these walls. And inside these walls, for the first time in a decade, there's peace. Not the artificial, suppressed silence of a crumbling marriage, but the genuine, messy, beautiful chaos of a father and son who are finally, truly, on the same team. You know, they say that hindsight is 20/20. But looking back at my marriage feels more like trying to see through a thick, gray fog. I find myself obsessing over the details, the small, seemingly insignificant moments that should have been red flags, but look like shadows in the light of my devotion. I remember our wedding day so vividly. I remember the way she looked at me, with a fire in her eyes that I convinced myself was undying love. Looking back now, I think that fire wasn't for me. It was for the future she was planning, for the ladder she was preparing to climb. I was just the support structure, the scaffolding she needed until she was strong enough to stand on her own. When we moved into this house, I spent weeks painting the nursery. I remember standing there, hand on my lower back, exhausted but feeling this overwhelming sense of pride. I was building a home. I thought she was building a home with me. But the moment our son was born, the divide became a canyon. She'd look at him, and I wouldn't see the awe that I felt. I'd see a calculation. She was already thinking about her return to work, about how many weeks of maternity leave she could survive before her career trajectory suffered. I told myself it was just ambition. I told myself she was a strong, modern woman. I excused her absence, her late nights, her emotional unavailability, all in the name of supporting her dreams. God, I was so stupid. I was so busy supporting her dreams that I allowed her to abandon the reality of the life we were supposed to be sharing. There's a specific kind of trauma that comes from being the nurturer when you're also the one who has to hold down the fort. People think the primary caregiver role is just about feeding and clothing. It's not. It's about being the emotional barometer. When my son would cry, I was the one who had to decode the tears. Was he hungry? Was he hurt? Was he lonely? I learned the nuances of his moods, the way his voice changes when he's scared, the way his breathing slows when he's finally fallen into a deep sleep. She never learned those things. She couldn't have, even if she'd wanted to, because she was never actually present. And when she was physically there, but mentally light years away, constantly checking her notifications, her posture always tense, as if she were waiting for an exit sign to light up. The legal proceedings have been a nightmare, but in a strange way, they've been the most honest conversations we've had in years. The lawyers, the mediators, they don't care about our history. They don't care about the why. They care about the logistics. And in that cold, objective environment, she showed her true hand. She didn't want custody. She didn't even fight for more than the bare minimum. When I sat there and watched her sign away the time she could have had with her son, I felt a wave of nausea. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to ask her, "Don't you see what you're losing? Don't you see that he is a person, not an object you can put on a shelf?" But she just signed the papers, checked her watch, and asked her lawyer how long it would take to get to her next meeting. That's when I realized the sociopathic label I'd been turning over in my mind wasn't just a bitter exaggeration. It was the only way to describe the lack of a human pulse in her behavior. There was a void where a mother's instinct should have been. It wasn't that she didn't know how to be a mother. It was that she viewed the role as an obstacle, a burden that kept her from being the someone she wanted to be in the professional world. She wanted the accolades of a high-powered career, and she saw the family as a detractor from that brand. It's cold, it's calculating, and it's the reality I'm now raising a child to understand, bit by bit, without poisoning his heart against her. I have to be so careful. My son doesn't need to know his mother is, for lack of a better word, empty. He just needs to know that he is loved. So when he asks, "Why doesn't mom call today?" I don't give him the ugly truth. I tell him she's very busy with her very important work. I tell him that she loves him in her own way, even if it doesn't look the same as what he sees in our house. It's a lie, I know. It's a white lie to protect a child who deserves so much more than the scraps of affection she tosses his way. But every time I say it, I feel a piece of my own integrity chip away. I hate that I have to lie for her. I hate that I have to be the one to manufacture the image of a mother who cares, just so he doesn't grow up believing he wasn't enough to make her stay. The therapy sessions are becoming less about fixing the divorce and more about rebuilding the man. My therapist told me last week, "You're mourning the idea of her, not the woman herself." And that hit me like a physical blow. She's right. I spent so much time holding on to the hope that she would wake up, that she would have an epiphany, that she would finally look at our son and realize that everything she was chasing was meaningless compared to him. But she didn't have that epiphany. She's out there, living her life, climbing her ladder, probably telling anyone who will listen that she was held back by her family life. The narrative she's spinning is the one where she's the victim and I'm the one who didn't let her shine. It makes my skin crawl. But I have to let it go. I have to. Because if I hold on to that anger, it's going to consume me, and I refuse to let my son be raised by a bitter, resentful man. He deserves the best of me, and the best of me can only exist when I let go of the worst of her. The seasons change, and with them, the house has started to feel different. It no longer feels like a place where things are being taken away. It feels like a place where things are being built, brick by shaky brick. My son, he's starting to find his footing too. There's a specific kind of light in his eyes that I haven't seen in years, a sort of uncomplicated happiness that only exists when a child knows exactly where they stand in the world. He knows that when he walks through that front door, I'm going to be there. He knows that the promise of a story, a game of catch, or a simple "how was your day?" isn't just a fleeting gesture. It's a commitment. But God, the shadows still linger in the corners of my mind. I still find myself awake at 2 a.m., the house quiet, the only sound the steady, rhythmic hum of the refrigerator. I think about the sheer audacity of her choice. People talk about career-driven individuals as if they're just passionate or focused. But when that focus demands the sacrifice of a child's emotional security, it stops being a career and starts being a crusade for validation. She wanted the status. She wanted the title on the business card that commanded respect in the boardroom, because the title of mother wasn't enough to fill that bottomless pit of a personality. I used to think she was broken, that she lacked the capacity for empathy because of some trauma in her own past. I spent nights trying to be her therapist, her husband, her cheerleader, all in the desperate hope that I could love the human back into her. What a fool I was. The hardest part about this transition isn't the legal battle, the splitting of assets, or the awkward, sterile exchanges of custody. It's the realization that I am still, in some tiny, stubborn corner of my heart, waiting for her to come back and say she was wrong. It's the instinct to reach out and tell her about a funny thing our son said at dinner, only to remember that she wouldn't care. She wouldn't laugh. She'd probably just look at her screen, sigh, and make some dismissive comment about how she's busy with a deadline. That's the real pain. Not the loss of her presence, but the loss of the possibility that she might have been someone else. I've had to cultivate a level of patience I never knew I possessed. There are days when I'm exhausted, when I've worked all day and the house is a mess, when the laundry is piled high and the bills are staring me down, and I just want to sit on the kitchen floor and cry. But I don't. I pick up the toys, I fold the laundry, I make the dinner. Because that's what parents do. And that's the difference between us. She viewed parenthood as a limitation. I view it as the most important project I will ever oversee. The social aspect of all this has been equally jarring. When I tell people the truth, that she walked away because she prioritized her career over being a mother, the reactions are always the same. There's a stunned silence, followed by an awkward, "Oh, well, she must be very successful." As if success in business somehow excuses the abandonment of a child. It's a societal double standard that drives me absolutely mad. If the roles were reversed, if I were a woman who walked out on my child for a career, I'd be public enemy number one. But because she's a woman who chose herself, it's framed as an act of empowerment. There is nothing empowering about neglecting the people who depend on you. There is nothing strong about choosing a corner office over the small, warm hand of your own son. I've had to learn to shut those people out too. The ones who try to validate her, the ones who whisper about how hard it must be for her to balance everything. They don't know the first thing about balance. Balance is making sure your child feels secure while you're crumbling inside. Balance is working a job to pay the bills while making sure your son doesn't feel the weight of those bills. She didn't want balance. She wanted an exit, and she took it. The court hearings are almost entirely behind us now. The lawyer told me today that the final decree will be signed by the end of next month. It feels like the closing of a chapter, or maybe the end of a long, feverish dream. I look at my son playing in the backyard, and I feel a sense of profound, protective ferocity. He is my life now. We have built our own little world, a world where he is the center, where he is listened to, where he is safe. It's not the life I envisioned 10 years ago, but it's a life that is honest. It's a life built on truth, not on the fragile, performative lies of a marriage that was never really a marriage at all. And honestly, that's enough. That's more than enough. I'm starting to realize that the person I was trying to save wasn't just my marriage, it was myself. And now, I'm finally starting to see the man I am when I'm not living for someone who doesn't exist. There's a strange phenomenon that happens when you reach the point of no return. You expect the earth to shatter or the sky to fall, but instead, the world just keeps spinning. The sun rises at the same time, the coffee pot still clicks, and the hum of the neighborhood remains unchanged. It's almost offensive, isn't it? That life doesn't pause to acknowledge the magnitude of the heartbreak you've endured? But there is a quiet power in that indifference. I've started to look at the sociopathic behavior I mentioned earlier with a bit more clarity. It's not that she's some cartoon villain twirling her mustache. It's more terrifying than that. She is a woman who has optimized herself for a life that doesn't include the weight of another human being. She's streamlined her existence. No messy emotions, no conflicting loyalties, no late-night disruptions from a child who had a nightmare and needs a hand to hold. She has scrubbed her life clean of anything that requires sacrifice. When I see her now, during those rare, disjointed visits, I don't feel the burning rage I used to feel. I feel a hollow, cold pity. Imagine going through your entire existence and never knowing the crushing, beautiful, all-consuming weight of unconditional love. She has her career, her accolades, her LinkedIn profile, and her corporate events. She has all of that, and yet, she has absolutely nothing when she closes the door at night. My son, on the other hand, is thriving. That's the most important thing I can tell you. He started taking an interest in things I never would have guessed. We've been building model airplanes, and he asks 1,000 questions about the engineering, his little forehead wrinkled in concentration. Every time he asks me a question, I make sure to give him the answer he needs. I don't give him the shorthand, the dismissive, because I said so, or the distracted, not now. I give him my time. It's funny. People always ask me how I manage it all. They frame it as a logistical miracle, as if being a single father is some kind of impossible feat. I tell them it's not a feat. It's just showing up. If you show up, if you are present, if you are consistent, the rest of it falls into place. The laundry gets done eventually. The dinner doesn't have to be gourmet. It just has to be warm and shared. The bedtime stories don't have to be award-winning. They just have to be read with your voice in the quiet of a dark room where he feels safe enough to let his guard down. I've had to be very firm with my own family too. They're the ones who keep asking, "Are you sure you can't try again?" Or, "Maybe you should just let her come back for a trial period." I have to shut that down immediately. I've reached a point where I realize that to allow her back into our space would be an act of betrayal against my son. He finally has a stable, loving environment. He finally has a father who prioritizes his happiness above everything else. Why would I risk that for the sake of appearances? Why would I trade his peace of mind for the social comfort of a traditional family unit that was never traditional in the first place? The loneliness used to be the worst part. I would go to the grocery store, look at the families in the aisles, and feel like an alien from another planet. I felt like I was wearing a sign that said, divorced/failed/broken. But that feeling is fading too. I'm starting to realize that the perfect families I see in the store are just as complicated as mine, only they're better at hiding the cracks. Maybe the fact that I'm forced to be honest about my situation is actually a gift. It has stripped away the pretense. There is no fake happiness in my home. If we're sad, we're sad. If we're tired, we're tired. If we're happy, it's real. There's a purity to that kind of life that I wouldn't trade for anything. I'm currently packing up the last of her things. It's a box of clothes, a few books, some random office supplies that she didn't bother to move when she left the first time. I'm not angry as I pack them. I'm just methodical. I'm cleaning out the last traces of her so that my son and I can start fresh. We're going to repaint the living room. Maybe we'll pick a color he wants. He's been talking about painting his room blue, something bright and vibrant. I think I'll let him pick. It's his space after all. The process of letting go is not a single grand gesture. It's a series of thousands of small decisions, 1,000 moments where you choose your sanity over the illusion of fixing something that was never meant to be fixed. Every time I walk past the boxes in the garage, I don't feel that tightness in my chest anymore. I don't wonder if she's coming back for them, or if she's just going to leave them here for the trash. The silence in the house has shifted from something heavy to something peaceful, like a room that has been finally aired out after years of being boarded up. You know, there's a certain stigma that comes with being a man who talks about his feelings, especially when it comes to the soft stuff, like parenting, emotional labor, and heartbreak. People want me to be the stoic, rugged guy who just grunts and gets on with it. But that's exactly how we got into this mess in the first place. By not talking, by not feeling, by not holding ourselves accountable for the emotional health of our children. My son needs a father who isn't afraid to be vulnerable. He needs to see that even when life knocks you down, you get back up. You wipe off the dirt, and you keep going for the people who matter most. I've had to deal with the well-meaning friends who tell me I need to get back out there and date, as if the solution to a failed marriage is just to replace the person who left. They don't understand that I'm not ready, and I don't know if I'll ever be. The idea of bringing someone else into this delicate, hard-won peace we've built, it feels like a threat. My son and I are in a rhythm. We found our own language, our own shorthand, our own way of existing that doesn't require us to perform for anyone. Why would I want to disrupt that? For a little bit of companionship? For the sake of tradition? No. I've spent too many years living for someone else's expectations. Now, I'm living for us. I saw her briefly at a school function a few weeks ago. It was the first time in months. She was dressed in this sharp, expensive suit, looking like she'd just walked out of a high-stakes board meeting. She looked clean, polished, and entirely disconnected. She walked right past me, offering a polite nod that was so superficial it could have been meant for a stranger in an elevator. She didn't even look for our son. She was on her phone before she'd even reached the exit of the building, and for the first time, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel the anger, the hurt, or the longing. I felt nothing. It was like watching a movie of a character I didn't even recognize. She is a stranger. That's the truth I finally accepted. The woman I married is gone, and the person who currently occupies her place is someone who chose a different life, a different priority, and a different set of values. I'm not angry about it anymore. I'm just observant. I see the choices she's made, and I see the price she's paid, even if she doesn't realize she's paid it yet. She has her career, and I have my son. And in the grand calculus of a lifetime, I know which one of us is going to look back and feel like they had a life worth living. As for the legal side, the finish line is in sight. The final hearing is scheduled for next month. My lawyer says it's going to be routine, just a rubber stamp exercise at this point. No arguments, no custody disputes, no drama. Just the administrative death of a marriage. It's funny how the end of such a monumental thing can be so incredibly boring. You expect fireworks, but you get paperwork. But I'm ready for the paperwork. I'm ready for the stamp that says divorced, so I can stop feeling like I'm in a state of suspended animation. I'm ready to stop being the husband who got left and just be a dad, a guy who likes to build Lego sets, who makes burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings, and who is finally, for the first time in his adult life, completely at peace with who he is. I've been thinking a lot about the people who read these stories, people like you, listening to me recount this life I've been handed. It's easy to judge, easy to wonder what you would do in my shoes. Would you have left earlier? Would you have fought harder? Would you have just walked away? There's no right answer, only the answer you can live with when you look in the mirror at the end of the day. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that you can't make someone else value your life. You can only value it yourself. You can only be the person you would want your children to grow up to be. If you're stuck in a situation that is slowly eroding your spirit, please, for the love of everything, don't wait for permission to leave. Don't wait for them to change. Protect your peace, protect your children, and most importantly, have the courage to walk away when the life you're living no longer reflects the person you know you are. The irony isn't lost on me. I spent so much time on Reddit, scrolling through threads about political scandals and international crises, trying to distract myself from the crumbling infrastructure of my own kitchen. I thought I was looking for answers, or maybe just a distraction from the crushing weight of knowing my marriage was dead on arrival. But looking back, I realized I was looking for a mirror. I was looking for someone else who had felt that same specific brand of heartbreak. The kind that comes from realizing your partner is a stranger who simply happens to sleep in the same house. When I finally posted my story, the response was polarizing. I got messages from people telling me I was a hero for taking full custody, and then, in the same breath, I'd see comments calling me a deadbeat because I wasn't providing for a two-income household. The toxicity of the internet is a wild thing to navigate, especially when you're already feeling like you're walking through a minefield. People love to project their own failures onto other people's stories. They love to act like they know the secret code to a successful marriage, as if one size fits all. But the reality is that sometimes people just don't belong together. Sometimes the person you think you know is just a facade, a well-constructed suit of armor designed to protect them from the very intimacy you were trying to offer. I remember one night, shortly after the separation was official, but before the final papers were signed, my son and I were sitting in the living room, and he asked me, point blank, "Does Mom not love me?" That's the kind of question that doesn't just cut you, it eviscerates you. It leaves you standing there, holding your breath, trying to summon the most gentle, protective answer in the world. I told him, "Your mom loves you in her own way, honey, but her way is just different from mine. She has a different path she needs to walk, and it doesn't always include being here with us." It was the truest thing I could say without breaking his heart completely. I don't know if he believed me. I don't think I even believed myself, but it was enough to keep the tears at bay. That's the job now, protecting his innocence while preparing him for the world. I've had to reevaluate what success even means. Before, I thought success was a promotion, a nice car, a well-behaved child, a quiet life. I thought it was the checkboxes on a societal list. But now, success is a Tuesday night where we have grilled cheese for dinner, watch a documentary about space, and he falls asleep on the couch before I have to carry him to bed. Success is waking up without that tight, knotted feeling in my chest that tells me I've done something wrong. Success is knowing that my son is safe, loved, and heard. I've been trying to be kinder to stay-at-home parents too, just like I mentioned in that post that got locked down. It's an exhausting, relentless, unglamorous job. Even though I'm working now, balancing the chaos of a job with the constant demands of single fatherhood, I have such a deep, profound respect for anyone who keeps the household running. It's the invisible labor that keeps the world from falling apart, and it's so often ignored, undervalued, or mocked by people who have no idea what it takes to be everything for someone else. So, if you're a stay-at-home parent, hear me. What you're doing matters. Even if no one says thank you, even if it feels like a thankless grind, you are the foundation of your child's future. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The divorce finalization is looming. 2 months. 60 days of waiting for a stamp, a date, a legal decree that says, you're free. It feels like I'm waiting for the final curtain to drop on a play I never actually auditioned for. My lawyer, a stern, efficient woman who has heard every horror story under the sun, told me that I should be proud of how I handled this. She said most people burn the house down on the way out. She said most people fight for years, draining their bank accounts and their souls, just to prove a point. But I didn't. I didn't want to fight. I wanted a way out. I wanted a clean break for the sake of my son. And I achieved that. I'm starting to think about what comes after the 2 months. What do I do when there's no more court, no more lawyers, no more ex-wife looming over my shoulder? I think I'm going to go on a trip. Just me and him. Maybe somewhere near the ocean. Somewhere where the air is salty and the horizon is wide open. A place where we can start our own traditions, far away from the reminders of what didn't work. I want to show him that life is big, that there are so many versions of happiness, and that he isn't limited by the choices his mother made. It's strange the way life works. I'm a different person than I was even 6 months ago. I'm quieter, sure, but I'm also more grounded. I'm more aware of the little things. The way the light hits the floor in the morning, the way my son's voice sounds when he's excited, the absolute, undeniable, piercing beauty of a day where nothing goes wrong. I'm not fixing my life anymore. I'm living it. And that's a revelation that's worth every single bit of the pain it took to get here. The final weeks before the divorce is officially finalized have started to feel less like a countdown and more like a gentle, slow exhale. For a long time, my life was a series of sharp, panicked inhales, wondering if I was good enough, if I was doing enough, if the silence from her end of the relationship was somehow my fault. But now, the air in my lungs feels clean. The house, which once echoed with the ghost of arguments and the heavy, suffocating weight of her indifference, is starting to feel like a home again. It's not perfect. There's still a pile of laundry on the chair in the corner that I've been meaning to fold for 2 days. And the backyard still needs to be mowed. But it's our mess. It's our reality. And for the first time, I don't feel the need to apologize for it. I caught myself thinking about my ex-wife the other day, not with anger, and not with that desperate gnawing need to understand her motives, but with a kind of detached clarity. I realized that the woman I was trying to save was never really there. The person I loved was a construct, a projection of my own desire for a partner, a mother for my son, a teammate in the chaotic, beautiful journey of life. But she wasn't a partner. She was a passenger who decided she wanted to be the pilot of a completely different flight. And once she realized she couldn't take our son with her into that sterile, high-stakes stratosphere of hers, she just checked out. It's a chilling thought, to be married to someone who treats their own family like a placeholder in their life. But that's the reality I've accepted. I've stopped asking, how could she? And started asking, how can I make sure our son never thinks for a second that he wasn't enough? Because he was enough. He has always been enough. The problem was never with him or with me. The problem was that she was chasing a version of success that had no room for the messy, tender reality of being a parent. She wanted the accolades, the titles, the validation from strangers in boardrooms, and she was willing to trade the warmth of a home to get them. I think about the people who read my story on Reddit, the ones who were so quick to judge. I see them in the comments, the ones who say things like, he must have been the problem, or why didn't he just support her more? It used to make my blood boil, but now it just makes me sad for them. Those people are likely living in their own versions of a hollow life, or they're so afraid of being vulnerable that they've built their own armor to keep the world out. They don't want to believe that you can give everything you have to someone, your time, your energy, your love, your devotion, and still lose. Because if they believe that, then they have to confront the fact that they're not in control either. I've reached a point where I don't care about their judgment anymore. My son's laughter is the only review I care about. When he comes home from school and tells me about his day, and his eyes light up because I'm actually fully listening, that's all the validation I need. That's the real work. That's the legacy. I'm raising a human being who is going to know that he is loved and that he is worthy and that he doesn't have to sacrifice his happiness for a job or a title or anyone else's approval. I've been planning for the time after the divorce is officially done. I want to start a journal for him. Not a diary of our struggles, but a record of all the things we've learned together. All the adventures, the funny stories, the things that made us laugh until our sides hurt. I want him to look back at this time, not as the time his mother left, but as the time his father really showed up. I want him to have a roadmap of what it looks like to be present, to be kind, and to be brave. Do you ever wonder what you would do if you were in my shoes? If you found yourself in a house with someone who had completely checked out, someone who was only there in body but had left in spirit years ago? It's a terrifying prospect. It's the kind of loneliness that buries itself in your bones. If you're in that spot right now, listening to this, I hope you know that you don't have to stay just because you promised. You don't have to hold the weight of a marriage that only one person is carrying. It's okay to acknowledge that you've done everything you could. It's okay to realize that the person you're with isn't the person you thought they were, and that they're never going to be that person again. You deserve to be with someone who sees you, someone who values the small, everyday moments of life. Someone who understands that the most important career you'll ever have is the one you build within the four walls of your home. If you're a parent especially, I hope you remember that your children are the ones who are going to carry your legacy. Don't teach them that they're an inconvenience. Don't teach them that work is more important than people. Teach them that they are loved, unconditionally, by someone who isn't afraid to put them first. As for me, I'm going to keep moving forward. The next 2 months will pass, the ink will dry, and the chapter will close. And then, I'm going to wake up the next morning, make those slightly burnt pancakes, and start a new, beautiful, messy, and wonderful day with my son. And for the first time in a decade, I'm going to be truly, honestly, unapologetically happy. The final countdown has begun. There are exactly 30 days left until the ink hits the paper and this marriage, this shell of a life I've been inhabiting, is officially dissolved. It's strange how something so monumentally painful can eventually feel so mundane. You spend years fighting for your life, your dignity, and your son's sense of security, and then suddenly, the legal machinery takes over, and it all boils down to a scheduled appointment at a courthouse. The air around me is starting to clear in a way I never thought possible. It's like the fog has finally lifted, revealing a landscape I didn't even realize I was trapped in. I've been spending my evenings with my son, just watching him grow. He's starting to talk more about his future, the things he wants to learn, the hobbies he's picking up, and every single time he asks me to watch him do something, a drawing, a Lego build, a silly dance, I am there. I am fully, completely present. It hit me the other day with the force of a tidal wave. She missed this. She missed the way he scrunches his nose when he's concentrating. She missed the way his laugh starts low and bubbles up into a full-blown giggle. She missed the way he says, "Dad, look!" with such pure, unadulterated joy that it makes my chest ache. She chose to trade all of this human, warm, messy, beautiful life, for a seat at a table that doesn't even know her name, for a title that won't hold her hand when she's scared, and for a career that will replace her the second she stops producing. There's a quiet tragedy in that. I don't feel the burning, acidic rage anymore. That fire burned out a long time ago. Now, there's just a profound sense of sadness for her. To live a life so devoid of connection, To be so terrified of the vulnerability that comes with parenthood that you'd rather retreat into the cold, calculated safety of professional success? That's a life sentence of its own. She thinks she's winning. She thinks she's free because she doesn't have the burden of us. But she has no idea what she's actually lost. She has no idea that the most important work she could have ever done was right here, in the quiet, humble moments of raising a child. I've been doing a lot of reflecting on the stay-at-home parent debate that erupted on my previous posts. It's fascinating how society views us, isn't it? As if the work of raising a human is something you do only if you have nothing better to do. People would tell me I was lucky to be at home, as if I were taking a vacation. They have no clue. The exhaustion of being the primary anchor for a developing human, the mental load of managing every single aspect of his well-being, it's more grueling than any office job I've ever held. And yet, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. I've realized that my worth isn't tied to a paycheck or a corporate ranking. My worth is tied to the way my son looks at me when he wakes up in the morning, knowing he's safe, knowing he's cared for, knowing he's the center of my world. If you're listening to this and you're feeling that same drift, that creeping, cold realization that your partner is already gone, please listen to me. Don't waste your years trying to animate a corpse. Don't spend your life trying to convince someone to want the same things you want. Life is far too short to be the only one holding the fort. You deserve a partner who is just as invested in the boring stuff as you are. You deserve someone who finds the same magic in a Saturday morning pancake breakfast as you do. You deserve someone who shows up. The final paperwork is sitting on my desk right now. It's just a stack of documents, really, but to me, it's a permission slip. It's the permission to stop waiting. It's the permission to stop trying to heal someone who doesn't want to be healed. It's the permission to build a life that is authentically, joyfully, and unapologetically ours. Soon, the lawyers will be done. The judge will sign the decree, and the legal chapter will close. And then, it's just us, my son and I. We're going to repaint that living room, maybe change the furniture, and truly, for the first time, claim this space as our own. We're going to take a trip, maybe to the coast, where the air is fresh and the horizon is wide. We're going to start fresh. And the most important thing? I'm going to make sure he grows up knowing that he was never, ever an inconvenience. That he was the best thing that ever happened to me. The countdown has shifted from months to weeks, and now it's down to days. There is a strange, quiet hum in the air, the kind of silence you hear right before a storm breaks, or perhaps the silence of a room after the last guest has finally departed. I find myself standing in the middle of our living room, just breathing. The house is quiet, but it's not the heavy, suffocating silence of the past. It's a clean, open silence. It feels like the space is finally mine again. A blank canvas where my son and I can start the work of painting our own future. I've been thinking a lot about the word success. It's such a loaded term, isn't it? We spend our entire lives chasing it, trying to measure it against the people around us, trying to justify our existence through our output, our bank accounts, and our titles. But as I pack up the final boxes, the last lingering remnants of a marriage that existed mostly on paper, I realize that my version of success has completely inverted. It used to be about holding it all together, about being the person who could sacrifice his own happiness for the sake of appearances. Now, success is simple. It's the sound of my son laughing in the other room. It's the way he looks at me when I tuck him in at night, a look of absolute, uncomplicated security. It's the realization that I am the anchor in his life, and I am finally, truly, in the right place. I've spent so much time dissecting the why of it all. Why did she leave? Why did she choose the career over the child? Why did she treat her own family like an inconvenience? I've realized that the why doesn't matter as much as the what now. The what now is that I am a single father, and I am doing the work. I am the one who makes the breakfasts, the one who does the homework, the one who listens to the fears and the dreams and the quiet, small observations that a child makes about the world. And that is the most important, most sacred work I will ever do. I see the comments sometimes, even now. People still try to tell me I'm bitter or that I'm being unfair to her. They say, she's just trying to find herself. Well, let her find herself. Let her find herself in the boardrooms, in the corner offices, and in the late-night emails. She can find whatever she wants, but she won't find us. She won't find the warmth, the messy, beautiful, exhausting, and wonderful life that we are building here. She gave that up. She traded the most precious thing in the world for a temporary validation that will eventually fade. And that's on her. My son, he's starting to see it too. Not in a hateful way, not in a way that poisons his heart, but in a way that shows he understands. He doesn't wait for her to call anymore. He doesn't stand by the window watching for her car. He's fully engaged in his own life, in his own growth. He's becoming the person he was always meant to be, and I am the proudest father in the world. I'm teaching him that being a man isn't about being tough or about being the provider in a cold, distant way. It's about being present. It's about being the person who shows up when it's hard, the person who stays when things get messy, the person who values the people in his life above any external accolade. When the divorce is finalized and the final decree is sitting on my desk, I think I'm going to frame it. Not because I'm happy about the divorce, but because it's the end of a long, dark tunnel. It's the proof that I survived. It's the proof that I stayed true to my son, even when everything around me was crumbling. It's the milestone that marks the beginning of the rest of our lives. If you're listening to this, if you're currently in a place where you feel like you're doing all the heavy lifting, where you feel like you're invisible in your own home, please hear me. You don't have to settle for a life that makes you feel smaller. You don't have to stay in a situation where your contributions are ignored and your love is unreciprocated. You have the power to create a different life. You have the power to walk away from the things that are eroding your soul. It's not selfish to prioritize your child's emotional well-being and your own sanity. It's necessary. I'm looking forward to the next month, the next year, the next decade. I'm looking forward to the quiet mornings, the chaotic evenings, the lessons learned, and the growth we're going to experience together. I'm looking forward to being the father my son deserves, and the man I've always wanted to be. And for the first time, I'm not scared. I'm ready. If you've enjoyed hearing about this journey, if my story has made you think, or if it's given you the strength to stand up for your own peace, please consider subscribing to the channel. There are so many more stories out there, so many more voices that need to be heard. And if you have a moment, drop a comment below. What would you do? How would you handle a situation where you felt like you were the only one holding the family together? I'd love to hear your thoughts, your experiences, and your wisdom. Because we're all in this together, and sometimes the best way to move forward is to share the road. The final papers are officially signed. It wasn't the dramatic, cinematic finale I once imagined. There was no gavel pounding, no shouting, no explosive confrontation. Just the monotonous, clinical sound of a pen scratching against thick bond paper, the rhythmic ticking of a wall clock, and the soft, neutral voice of a court clerk reciting the final decrees. And then, it was over. The marriage that had been a slow-motion car crash for the better part of a decade was legally dead. I walked out of that building into the bright, harsh glare of a Tuesday afternoon, and I felt nothing but an immense, profound lightness. People always ask, do you feel bitter now that it's over? And the truth is, I don't. Bitterness requires energy. It requires you to keep looking in the rearview mirror, checking on the wreckage you've left behind. I don't have time for that. I have a school pickup in 45 minutes. I have to make sure he's got his gym kit for tomorrow. I have to think about what we're going to do for his birthday next month. I have a life to build, and that requires every ounce of focus I have. When I got home, I did something I'd been meaning to do for months. I took down the wedding photos that were still tucked away in the back of the hallway closet, the ones I hadn't had the heart to toss earlier. I didn't burn them. That felt too dramatic, too much like a scene out of a bad soap opera. I just put them in a box, taped it shut, and put it in the attic. Not to hide them, but to archive them. That life happened. It's part of our history. It's the origin story of my son. But it's not our present, and it's certainly not our future. I've started to notice the way my son reacts to our new reality. He's calmer. The nervous habit he had of picking at his fingernails when things got tense, that's gone. The way he used to flinch when someone raised their voice, that's faded too. He's learning that this house is a sanctuary, not a battleground. And seeing him reclaim his own childhood, is the greatest validation I could ever receive. He knows I'm here. He knows that no matter how hard his day was, no matter what he's struggling with, he has a landing pad in me. I've had a lot of time to think about the sociopathic comment I made in my earlier posts. I still stand by the clinical observation of it, even if the label sounds harsh to some people. When you watch someone strip away their own maternal instinct to prioritize a corporate ladder, you're watching a fundamental disconnect from humanity. It's a frightening thing to witness. It makes you realize that some people move through the world in a completely different way. They aren't built for the intimacy of family. They're built for the validation of the world. And that's a tragedy for them, even if they don't realize it. I feel a weird, distant pity for her. She has the career she wanted. She has the life she curated. And yet, she's missing the entire point of being alive. She's missing the messy, unpolished, beautiful reality of love. I know some of you are probably wondering if I'm worried about the future, about how I'll handle the teen years or the complications that come with co-parenting. And honestly, yes, I'm worried. But it's a different kind of worry. It's not the paralyzed, deer-in-the-headlights fear I used to have. It's the active, productive worry of a father who is actually involved. I'll make mistakes. I'll probably give the wrong advice at some point, or get frustrated when he's struggling with math, or have days where I feel like I'm in way over my head. But that's okay, because I'll be there. I won't be in an office, and I won't be on a business trip, and I won't be mentally checked out. I'll be right here. I'm starting a new tradition this coming weekend. We're going to take a drive out to the coast, just the two of us. We'll pack a cooler, we'll blast some music he likes, and we'll just spend the day watching the waves. I want him to know that when life feels like it's too much, you go to the places that make you feel small in the best way possible. You go to the places that remind you that life is vast and beautiful, and that you are a part of it. If you're listening to this story and you find yourself in that same dark, narrow hallway I was in, please remember, you don't have to finish the walk if you're heading toward a dead end. You have the right to turn around. You have the right to build a life that actually reflects the values you hold dear. And if that means you have to be the one who does the heavy lifting, if that means you have to be the one who stands tall when everyone else is crumbling, then do it. Do it for your children. Do it for your future. Do it for the person you know you're supposed to be. It's been a long journey, and there's still so much road ahead of us. But for the first time in a decade, I'm not just surviving, I'm living. And that is the most incredible feeling in the world. It's strange how, now that the dust has finally settled and the court documents are gathering dust on my desk, I don't feel the urge to check the status of my old life anymore. I don't spend my lunch break scanning LinkedIn for her updates, and I certainly don't lie awake wondering if she suddenly had a change of heart. That part of me, the version that was perpetually waiting for a signal that never came, has essentially ceased to exist. I've traded the agony of waiting for the peace of simply doing. I've been teaching my son how to cook lately. It started with simple things, boiling pasta, scrambling eggs, things that feel like small victories. He's so proud of himself when he puts a plate down in front of me, his chest puffed out like he's conquered the world. I look at him and realize that this is what true legacy is. It's not about the career you leave behind or the name you carve into a building. It's about the person you're raising, the kindness you're instilling, and the security you're providing. I'm teaching him that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to ask for help, and that the strongest thing a man can do is be present for the people who need him. I've had a few people reach out since I started sharing this, asking how I handle the nights when the weight of it all threatens to pull me under. And the honest answer is, I lean into the mess. When I'm tired, I tell him. I don't hide my exhaustion behind a mask of forced positivity. If I'm having a rough day, I tell him, Dad had a tough day, but I'm okay, and I'm glad you're here. It's a small, honest connection that keeps us grounded. It shows him that life is a series of highs and lows, and that we don't have to navigate them perfectly. We just have to navigate them together. I've also started doing some volunteer work at the local community center, just an hour or two on the weekends. It's been an eye-opener. You see all these different families, all these different struggles, and it hits you that you are absolutely not alone in the chaos. There are so many of us out there, the single dads, the single moms, the people who are just doing their best to keep the lights on and the kids happy. It makes me feel less like an alien and more like part of a community. And it's taught me that my story isn't unique, but it is mine. And I'm finally okay with that. People ask me, do you hate her? And for a long time, the answer would have been a resounding yes. But hate is another form of attachment. Hate is a tether that keeps you locked into the past. I've cut the tether. I don't hate her. I don't even really feel much of anything when her name comes up. She is simply a person who made a series of choices, and those choices led her away from us. That's not a tragedy anymore. It's just a fact. She is a chapter I have finished reading, and I've moved on to the next one. The house is finally starting to feel like ours. I painted the living room that light, airy blue my son wanted. We've rearranged the furniture to make more room for his Lego sets and his art supplies. It's not the house I bought 10 years ago, and thank God for that. That house was a museum of a marriage that wasn't working. This is a home. It's a living, breathing space where we are allowed to be ourselves. There's a freedom in knowing that I don't have to explain myself to anyone anymore. I don't have to justify why I'm taking the afternoon off to go to a school play. I don't have to defend my parenting style. I don't have to compromise my values to keep the peace. I am the sole architect of this life, and I am loving the blueprints. If you're listening to this and you're still in the thick of it, know this. The transition is hard, and it will challenge you in ways you didn't know were possible. You will feel lonely, you will feel overwhelmed, and there will be nights where you wonder if you're doing the right thing. But keep going. Keep showing up. Keep being the rock for your children. Because one day, you'll wake up and you'll realize that the fog has cleared and you're standing on the other side. And you'll look back at the person you were and you'll be proud of the fact that you didn't give up. You have a purpose, and it's not tied to someone else's expectations. It's tied to the life you build, the love you give, and the person you choose to be every single day. So keep going. Your life is waiting for you, and it's going to be so much better than you ever dared to imagine. I've poured so much of this experience into our community here, and reading your comments has genuinely helped me find the closure I was looking for. To everyone who has shared their own stories, or even just offered a kind word, thank you. It's reminded me that even in our darkest moments, we are connected by the shared reality of our humanity. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. We have a lot more stories to tell, and a lot more living to do. And if you have a moment, tell me, what's one thing that you've done recently to reclaim your own peace? I want to know what's working for you. Let's keep this conversation going. The silence of this house isn't heavy anymore. It's light. It's the kind of silence you find in a room that's finally been cleared of clutter, where you can walk around without bumping into sharp edges or stumbling over old wounds. I'm sitting here, watching the sun hit the hardwood floors, And for the first time in what feels like an eternity, I don't feel the need to look over my shoulder. I don't feel the need to check my phone for a text that won't come, or to rehearse an argument that won't happen. The divorce is a closed book on the shelf, and I'm busy living in the chapters that follow. There's a profound shift that happens in your nervous system when you stop being the fixer. For years, I was the one holding the marriage together with invisible glue, trying to ignore the way the edges were fraying. I was the one who was constantly negotiating, constantly compromising, and constantly apologizing for things I hadn't done just to keep the peace. When you finally stop that, when you accept that you can't save a ship that's already taking on water, you gain back an enormous amount of mental and emotional real estate. I've been using that space to just be with my son. Last week, we went to the park. It was a simple Tuesday afternoon thing. We kicked a ball around, and then we just sat on a bench and ate some ice cream that was melting faster than we could finish it. He looked at me, covered in chocolate, and said, "Dad, I'm really happy." And my chest, which used to feel so tight, just expanded. I realized then that all the struggle, all the court hearings, all the nights spent agonizing over whether I was doing the right thing, all of it was worth that one sentence. He wasn't just content. He was happy. He didn't have to worry about whether Mom was in a good mood or if she was going to be home for dinner. He didn't have to carry the emotional burden of a failing household. He was free to be a kid. I've been reading a lot of the comments you guys have left on my story, and one thing that keeps coming up is the fear. The fear of being a single parent, the fear of the financial strain, the fear of the stigma. And I get it. I was terrified too. I remember sitting in the dark of my bedroom, wondering how I was going to manage it all, feeling like I was stepping off a cliff without a parachute. But the truth is, the cliff wasn't as high as I thought it was. And when you start falling, you realize you have wings. You're more capable than you give yourself credit for. You're more resilient than the person who left you made you feel. I'm still learning to navigate the world as a man who isn't defined by a partnership. It's a strange, liberating feeling. I go to the store, and I don't feel like I have to buy things for us. I go to the bank, and I don't feel like I have to justify my spending. I make decisions based on what's best for me and my son, and it's a level of autonomy that I had completely forgotten existed. It's not just about the logistics. It's about the identity. I'm not a husband anymore. I'm a father. I'm an individual. And I'm a human being who is finally allowed to have his own needs met. I've been thinking a lot about the message I wanted to send to the world when I first decided to write this all down. It wasn't to bash her. It wasn't to get sympathy. It was to tell the truth. It was to say that sometimes the person you marry isn't the person you stay with, and that's okay. It's okay to realize that the life you imagined isn't the life you're meant to have. And it's okay to walk away from someone who doesn't see your worth, especially when you have a little one who needs you to be the best version of yourself. My ex-wife? I don't know where she is today, and honestly, I don't think about it much. Maybe she's in a boardroom. Maybe she's on a flight. Maybe she's chasing that next big win. I hope she finds what she's looking for. But I'm already holding what I'm looking for. I'm holding the hand of my son as we walk through the front door of our home, and I know that everything we need is right here. We've had a lot of questions about what I'd tell my younger self. If I could go back 10 years to the man who was standing at the altar, looking into those eyes and believing that the future was written in stone, what would I say? I'd tell him to look closer. I'd tell him to prioritize the way she treats people, not the way she treats him when she wants something. I'd tell him that love is a verb, not a noun, that if it isn't being acted upon every single day, it's just a ghost. But mostly, I tell him to hold on to his own sense of self, because he's going to need it. I'm ready for whatever comes next. I'm ready for the teenage years, the heartbreak, the growth, the change. I'm ready for it all, because I know that as long as I'm showing up, as long as I'm being the person my son needs me to be, we're going to be just fine. If you've been following this story, thank you. You've been a part of my healing process, and I hope, in some small way, this has helped you find your own path toward peace. Keep showing up for yourselves. Keep building the lives you deserve. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Don't let anyone else hold the pen. I'm going to go get ready for soccer practice now. It's a beautiful day, and I don't want to miss a single second of it. The sunlight filtering through the kitchen window today hit the countertops at just the right angle, making the entire room glow with a soft, warm amber. It's a small thing, one of those microscopic details you overlook when you're drowning in the toxicity of a failing marriage. But now, in this quiet, solitary house, I find myself lingering on these moments. I find myself actually seeing the life I've built. I was standing there, coffee in hand, when my son walked in, his hair an absolute disaster, clutching his favorite worn-out blanket. He didn't say a word, just climbed up onto the stool and rested his chin on the wood, watching me. There was no tension, no calculation, no "what does he want from me" energy. Just pure, unadulterated presence. I leaned down and kissed the top of his head, and in that simple gesture, I felt the final, lingering ache in my heart, the one that had been there for years, simply vanish. It wasn't like a sudden epiphany or a burst of fireworks. It was like a knot being untied, one string at a time, until the rope just went limp. I've been reflecting on the nature of the break. People talk about divorce as if it's a sudden event, a single violent severance. But for us, it was a slow, agonizing unraveling. We were already miles apart before the papers were even drawn up. We were living in the same house, eating the same meals, and yet we were inhabitants of two different planets. I spent so much time trying to bridge that gap, trying to pull her back into our orbit, only to realize that she had been orbiting something else entirely. Her own ego, her own professional ambition, her own carefully curated, shallow identity. And the most painful part wasn't that she didn't love me. It was that she viewed the idea of loving me and our son as a constraint on her true potential. I've found that the best way to move on has been to commit to radical honesty. Not just with you guys, not just with my therapist, but with myself. I stopped sugarcoating the past to protect her image. I stopped telling myself that she meant well, or that she was just going through a hard time. She was a woman who didn't want the life she chose, and she wasn't brave enough to admit it until it was too late. Recognizing that hasn't made me bitter. It's made me observant. It's helped me identify the kind of people I want in my life, and the kind I need to keep at arm's length. I think about the people who are currently in the middle of their own unraveling. I see the comments you guys leave about feeling trapped, about feeling like you're the only parent who actually cares, about the sheer, exhausting weight of being the primary nurturer in a household that doesn't appreciate you. If there's one thing I can impart to you, it's this. Your child's emotional baseline is being set by what they see you doing right now. If they see you sacrificing your own soul to keep a hollow, cold marriage together, they will learn that's what love is. They will learn that it's okay to be neglected. But if they see you choose self-respect, if they see you choose peace over pain, they will learn that their own happiness is worth protecting. You are teaching them how to be treated by their future partners. That is a responsibility far greater than keeping a marriage certificate valid. I'm looking forward to the future now. Not with that panicked, desperate hope I used to have, but with a steady, quiet confidence. My son and I have our traditions. We have our little rituals. We have our own way of talking about the world. He's becoming such an empathetic, thoughtful kid, the kind of person who asks me, "Dad, are you tired after a long day?" Not because he's afraid of my mood, but because he's actually learning to care for the people in his life. I've started to forgive myself too. That's been the biggest hurdle. I had to forgive myself for not knowing better sooner. I had to forgive myself for staying through the cold winters of our marriage, for thinking I could fix someone who didn't want to be fixed. I had to realize that I was a human being trying to do the right thing, and that I was manipulated by the person I trusted most. Once you forgive yourself, the burden of the past gets so much lighter. You aren't defined by the bad choices you made when you were young and naive. You're defined by the grace and the strength you show when you finally wake up and walk away. We're heading out to the coast this weekend. I've got the car packed, the map marked, and the mood is just light. We're going to walk the shoreline, breathe in the salt air, and just exist. No expectations. No, we need to have a profound conversation about the divorce. Just us, being together in a world that is so much bigger than our old house, our old problems, and our old life. If you've stuck with me through this, thank you. This journey has been as much yours as it has been mine. You've listened, you've debated, you've supported, and you've challenged me to see my own story from different angles. And if you're out there, wondering if it's time to close your own chapter, I hope you have the courage to pick up the pen and write the next one for yourself. You don't need anyone's permission to be happy. You don't need anyone's approval to seek out a life that fits your values. You just need to be brave enough to take the first step. The coast was everything I needed it to be. There's something about the ocean that puts your problems into perspective. It's vast, it's indifferent, and it has a way of washing away the sediment of the week. My son spent hours just running along the waterline, his shoes kicked off, the sand between his toes, while I sat on a piece of driftwood and watched him. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for a text message, I wasn't checking my email for an update from her lawyer, and I wasn't analyzing the tone of her last phone call. I was just watching him exist. And in that, I found a peace I didn't even know existed. People ask me, do you think you'll ever find someone else? It's such a standard question, almost like a polite placeholder in conversation. And I don't have a snappy answer. The truth is, I don't know. For a long time, the idea of intimacy felt like a trap. When you've been living with someone who views your presence as a chore, you start to believe that's just what love looks like. But I'm realizing that's not true. I'm realizing that love isn't about navigating around someone else's career ambitions or waiting for crumbs of affection. Love is a partnership. It's a shared project. It's two people standing side by side, holding up the roof of a house they both want to live in. If I never find that, I'm okay, because I found it with myself, and I found it in the relationship I have with my son. And that's a pretty damn good start. I've been reading the comments from the latest threads, and I'm struck by how many of you are in the middle of your own quiet crises. You're sitting in your living rooms at 11 p.m., listening to the hum of the house, wondering if you're the only one who feels this way. I want you to know you aren't. You are part of a massive, unspoken community of people who have woken up to the fact that their perfect life was actually a gilded cage. And the bravest thing you can do, the single most life-altering decision you can make, is to admit that you're unhappy and that you're not willing to settle for it anymore. It's not about being selfish. It's about being real. My son asked me something today while we were driving back from the coast. He said, "Dad, do you think we'll always be happy?" And I didn't give him the easy answer. I didn't lie and say yes. I told him, no, we won't always be happy. We'll be sad sometimes, and we'll be mad sometimes, and we'll be tired sometimes. But we'll always be together, and we'll always be honest with each other about how we feel. He seemed to accept that. It was like he understood that life isn't supposed to be a constant state of euphoria, but a collection of moments that you navigate with the people who matter most. I've officially packed away the last of the marriage boxes. I put them in the donation pile at the local shelter. It felt like I was giving someone else a chance to find use for things I didn't need anymore. It was a physical release, a way of signaling to my own brain that the past is officially closed. I don't need the mementos. I have the memories, and I have the lessons, and I have the boy who is currently in the kitchen asking me what's for dinner. That's where I am now. I'm in the kitchen, making dinner. It's a simple meal, something easy, something healthy, something we can eat while we watch a movie. It's not a fancy life. It's not a life that would make the headlines or earn me a promotion. But it's a life where I'm allowed to breathe. It's a life where I'm allowed to be myself. And honestly, that's all I ever wanted. If you've been with me through this, if you've listened to me vent, cry, figure things out, and eventually heal, thank you. You've been the sounding board I needed. You've reminded me that even when we feel entirely alone, there's always someone else out there who understands. If this story has helped you in any way, keep it going. Pass the lesson on. Tell the person in your life that you care about them. Or if you're the one holding the fort, give yourself a break today. You're doing a good job. We're moving on now. The divorce is done, the house is ours, and the future, that big, blank, wonderful future, is wide open. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know one thing for sure. It's going to be ours. And that's enough. I walked into the kitchen this morning and the house was absolutely still. Usually, in the old life, that silence felt heavy, like a warning sign or a prelude to a fight. Today, it felt like an invitation. It was the silence of a home that was finally at peace with itself. I poured a cup of coffee and just stood by the window, watching the neighborhood wake up. And for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't bracing for impact. I wasn't scanning my brain for any lingering obligations to someone who couldn't be bothered to notice my existence. I was just a man, drinking coffee, in a house that finally belonged to me and my son. People often ask me if there's a moment I can point to, a singular dramatic pivot, where I finally realized that my life had truly changed. They want a movie moment. They want the scene where the guy throws the ring in the ocean, or makes a big, loud public declaration of independence. But the reality of healing is much quieter than that. It's the Tuesday morning where you realize you didn't check your ex's social media at all while you were making breakfast. It's the moment you stop rehearsing the what-ifs in the shower. It's the realization that you're finally capable of finding joy in the small, mundane things without feeling like you need permission or validation from the person who hurt you. I've been thinking a lot about the word resilience. We talk about it like it's a heroic virtue, something you summon in the face of a great cinematic tragedy. But resilience is actually much more boring and much more difficult than that. It's just the ability to wake up the next day, make the pancakes, go to work, pay the bills, and tuck your kid in at night, even when your heart feels like it's been put through a meat grinder. It's the refusal to let the bitterness turn into a lifestyle. It's the conscious choice to be the parent you never had or the partner you always wanted to be, even when the world gives you every excuse to be cynical. My son and I have developed a new routine. Every Friday, we have no rule night. It's not as chaotic as it sounds. It just means we don't follow the usual schedule. We eat pizza on the floor, we watch a movie that probably doesn't have any educational value, and we stay up a little too late talking about everything and nothing. It's become our sanctuary. It's a time when he feels the most comfortable asking me the big, heavy questions about life, about his mom, about why things happened the way they did. And every time he asks, I give him the truth, carefully, gently, and without the poison of resentment. I tell him that sometimes adults make choices that don't make sense, and that it's not his fault, and it's not my fault. It's just life. I've had to be very firm with the people in my life who still try to offer their unsolicited advice. There's always someone who wants to play marriage counselor after the divorce is finalized, saying things like, well, maybe you could have been more patient, or she's had a rough road, maybe you should cut her some slack. I don't engage with those people anymore. I have a standard reply now. I am the only one who lived inside the walls of that house. I am the only one who knows the cost of the life we were living, and I've decided that the price was too high. It shuts them down immediately. You don't owe anyone an explanation for the boundaries you set to protect your peace. If you're listening to this and you're still waiting for a sign that it's okay to put yourself first, this is it. This is your sign. You have spent long enough being a secondary character in someone else's drama. You have spent long enough trying to make yourself small so that someone else could feel big. You have spent long enough sacrificing your emotional health for the sake of a status quo that was destroying you. It is time to step into the lead role of your own story. It is time to recognize that you are worthy of a life that is built on mutual respect, genuine care, and the kind of love that doesn't require you to be a martyr. I've reached a point where I don't even think about the sociopathic behavior anymore. I don't look for patterns, I don't look for reasons, and I don't look for an apology that I know is never coming. She's a background character in a story that is no longer about her. She is a memory, a cautionary tale perhaps, but a memory nonetheless. My life is forward-facing now. I'm looking at the road ahead, and it looks brighter than it ever has. I've been so incredibly grateful for the platform this has given me. Reading your comments, hearing your stories, and seeing the way this community has rallied around the idea that we all deserve a life of peace, it's been the final piece of the puzzle for me. We're all walking through the fire, and knowing that there are others on the other side, waiting to tell us it's going to be okay, makes the heat a little less intense. If you found a shred of hope in my story, then it was all worth it. If you've been reminded that your value as a parent and as an individual isn't tied to a paycheck or a partner's approval, then I've done my job. Keep building, keep growing, keep showing up, and most importantly, keep protecting that spark of self-respect that the world tried to snuff out. You're doing a great job, even on the days when you feel like you aren't. Especially then. The final page of that old dusty chapter has been turned, and I'm finding that the air on this side of the page is remarkably thin and sweet. People ask if I miss her, the woman I thought I knew 10 years ago. It's a trick question, really. You can't miss a ghost, and you certainly can't mourn someone who never truly showed up for the moments that mattered. I think back to those nights when I sat in the dark, watching her stare into the glow of her phone, waiting for her to look up, to see me, to ask me how my day was. I was waiting for a ghost to manifest, and now I see how much of my own life I wasted in that vigil. I'm teaching my son the art of the soft landing. We talk about it all the time. When things go wrong, when he drops his ice cream or fails a test, or gets his feelings hurt by a friend, I tell him that he doesn't need to be perfect. He doesn't need to be tough. He just needs to know that when he falls, he's going to hit something soft, and that something is me. I am his safety. I am his anchor. And in return, he's given me the greatest gift a parent can ever receive. He's given me a reason to keep the promises I make. I told him I'd always be there, and I've never broken that word. Not once. I've had to reconcile with the anger too. It's a slow process, like letting a wound drain. For a long time, I wanted someone to blame. I wanted to drag the whole mess into the light and demand that everyone see exactly how I was betrayed, how I was gaslit, how I was left to carry the entire emotional load of a family while she pursued her higher purpose. But I've realized that blame is a shackle. As long as I'm holding on to the anger, I'm still letting her control my emotions. I'm still giving her the power to dictate my mood, my peace, and my future. So I've put the anger down. It wasn't serving anyone, least of all my son. I see the world differently now. I see the people in the grocery store, the parents at the playground, the couples in the park, and I wonder, who's holding the fort here? Who's the one doing the invisible work? Who's the one sacrificing their own dreams so someone else can flourish? It's a lens I can't take off, but it's given me a deep, abiding empathy for the people who are suffering in silence. If you're one of those people, if you're the silent martyr in your own household, please listen. Your sacrifice isn't a badge of honor. It's an act of self-erasure. You are teaching your children that their needs are secondary, and you are teaching your partner that your boundaries are non-existent. It's time to stop the cycle. The house is finally exactly as I want it. It's not curated for guests, it's curated for living. There are books everywhere, half-finished projects on the dining table, and a dog that sheds way too much hair on the rug. It's a home that says, people live here. It's a home that says, we are messy, and we are happy, and we are real. And that is a victory that feels better than any promotion or accolade I could have ever chased. I've been thinking about the CTA I wanted to leave you all with. Something that feels as honest as the story itself. If you've heard something in my journey that resonated with yours, don't just close the app and go about your day. Take one small action toward your own peace. Maybe it's setting a boundary you've been afraid to set. Maybe it's finally admitting to yourself that you're unhappy. Maybe it's just making a commitment to put your own well-being on the list of priorities. Whatever it is, do it. You don't need to do it all at once, and you don't need to do it perfectly. You just need to start. If this story has given you even a fraction of the comfort that writing it has given me, then it's been worth every syllable. We're all in this together, trying to navigate the messy, beautiful, and often painful process of being human. If you want to keep following along, or if you want to share your own stories with our community, hit that subscribe button. Let's keep building a space where we can talk about the stuff that actually matters, the stuff that keeps us up at night, and the stuff that eventually helps us sleep a little sounder. I'm looking forward to the next year. I'm looking forward to the growth. I'm looking forward to being the kind of father. The divorce is done. The life I had is a memory. Do you want me to continue with the next part? The silence in the house this morning was different. It wasn't the hollow silence of a space waiting for someone to return, nor the suffocating silence of an argument left mid-sentence. It was the silence of a home that was finally at rest, a place where the air felt lighter, like it had finally been scrubbed clean of all those years of performative stability. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, just watching the steam rise off my coffee, and I found myself thinking about how strange it is that we cling so tightly to the things that hurt us, as if the pain itself were a tether keeping us connected to a reality we were terrified to lose. But the reality was a fabrication, a stage set for a play that only one of us was actually performing. I look at my son now, and the guilt that used to gnaw at my gut, that paralyzing feeling that I had somehow failed him by allowing his mother to be who she was, has finally faded into a dull, manageable memory. I'm starting to see that I didn't fail him. I protected him. I was the one who caught the pieces as they fell, the one who stayed up through the fever dreams, the one who made sure his world didn't collapse even when mine was burning to the ground. That wasn't a failure. That was an act of survival. And in surviving, I taught him the most important lesson he will ever learn, that you don't have to stay in a place that treats you like you're invisible. People often ask me, usually with a hint of skepticism, if I still get angry. And I've learned to answer that honestly. Anger is a luxury I can no longer afford. When you're the sole anchor, you don't have time to be angry. You have to be steady. You have to be the one who keeps the boat upright, the one who navigates the waves, the one who looks toward the horizon instead of staring at the leak in the hull. The anger was a symptom of my own helplessness, and now that I'm in charge of my own life, there's no room for it. I'm too busy building. I'm too busy being the father he needs. I've started to realize that the sociopathic coldness I used to be so obsessed with analyzing in her, that total lack of empathy, wasn't something I needed to solve. It was just a trait. She was a person who was wired for the climb, for the acquisition of power, for the validation of external achievement, and she simply didn't have the hardware for the messiness of love. Trying to fix that was like trying to teach a fish to climb a tree. It was never going to happen. And accepting that was the most liberating thing I've ever done. It freed me from the expectation that I could change her, and it freed her to pursue the life she was actually capable of living. We were just two people running on completely different operating systems. I've been doing a lot of writing, mostly for myself, but sometimes I'll look back at the things I posted when I was first starting to wake up. The raw, unfiltered pain in those early words is jarring now. I can barely recognize that man, that terrified, lost guy who thought his life was ending because his marriage was. I want to go back to him and tell him that his life wasn't ending. It was finally, agonizingly beginning. I want to tell him that the emptiness he felt wasn't a void to be filled, but a space to be built upon. We're heading into a new season, both literally and figuratively. The air is starting to turn, the leaves are changing, and there's a sense of transition in the wind. We've got new projects for the house, new hobbies to explore, and a whole world to discover together. My son is at that age where everything is a wonder, where he's discovering his own interests, his own personality, and his own way of seeing the world. And I get a front row seat to all of it. I don't have to miss a single minute. I don't have to be on a conference call while he's discovering how to ride a bike. I don't have to be busy when he wants to show me a bug he found in the yard. I am present. And that is a privilege I will never, ever take for granted. If you're listening to this and you're still waiting for someone else to change, or for the situation to get better on its own, stop. Take a look at the life you're living and ask yourself if it's the one you want to be in 10 years from now. If the answer is no, start moving. Start small. Start by taking back your time, your space, and your peace. You don't have to have a plan for the next decade. You just need to have a plan for tomorrow. I'm so thankful for this community. You've listened to me process this entire nightmare, and you've helped me turn it into a story of recovery. We've talked about parenting, about divorce, about self-worth, and about what it actually means to be a decent person in a world that often rewards the opposite. It's been a journey that I couldn't have taken alone. So thank you. Thank you for the support, for the comments, and for the shared humanity. If you found a way to reclaim your peace, or if you're still working on it, please keep sharing your stories. We need more voices telling the truth, even when that truth is painful. The house is quiet again, but it's a good silence, a working, living, growing silence. My son is in the other room working on a school project, and I'm going to go help him. Because that's what we do. We help each other. We show up, we build, and we move forward.